terror to Australia was the wild colonial boy.
After the gun battle with the Faithful Brothers, the police believed Ben Hall to still be in the Goulburn district and suspected that the gang would try and stay with any number of known harbourers. Most notably was Thomas Byrne, a friend of the gang, who lived at Mut-Mutbilly, 20 miles from Goulburn. Police had information that known telegraphs of the gang often attended the Breedalbane Hotel, close to Mut-Mutbilly, and sure enough, 4 known telegraphs were found at the inn and held there by police. As the main police party, led by Mr. Huthwaite, Justice of the Peace, and Detective James Andrew Pye, a veteran of the hunt for Frank Gardiner and his eventual capture at Apis Creek, Queensland, moved during the night towards Burns's property. The gang had enjoyed a hearty evening meal and sang songs with the family, and Gilbert played the Jew's harp. Byrne, buoyed by the gang's visit and a few extra shillings, drank heavily. After a few hours of festivities and feeling safe, the 3 bushrangers moved to the barn where Byrne had prepared beds for them to sleep the night, and the gang's horses were resting in the home paddock. The police quietly arrived in the early hours of the morning, 25th of February 1865, and moved to surround Burns's house, where they believed from information the gang to be sleeping. As they approached, 2 of the police, Detective Pye and Trooper Wiles, passed close to the open barn door, and Pye took a look inside. As he did, both Gilbert and Dunn suddenly opened fire, the muzzle flash lighting up the barn. Both constables instantly returned fire. In the exchange, Trooper Wiles was shot and wounded in the hand and leg. Wiles collapsed, but both troopers continued firing. Other police had secured the bushrangers' horses. Huthwaite and others moved to cover the barn, as Ben Hall, Gilbert and Dunn made a dash for the scrub through the barn door, revolvers firing as they fled. The last of the 3 out the door, Ben Hall, was hit and wounded in the shoulder as he ran, and he fell heavily. But he quickly picked himself up, and the 3 villains escaped on foot into the early morning light and a cornfield surrounded by thick bush, with the police in pursuit. Following their tracks, the police searched unsuccessfully for some hours before finally giving up and returning to arrest Thomas Byrne for harbouring. The bushrangers on foot travelled 1.5 miles to a Mr. Purcell's home, where Ben Hall's wound was cleaned and dressed before they left on 3 new horses. Shortly after, Mr. Purcell was arrested for harbouring. Within days, the government reward for Ben Hall, Gilbert and Dunn rose to £1,000 each. The government and police, tired of being continually humiliated by Ben Hall, had by early 1865 resolved to rid the colony of the bushranger menace once and for all, and to restore the confidence of the people in the police. For 3 years Ben Hall had run the police ragged, and he still had a lot of support from smaller struggling communities. Drastic measures were now being debated in the New South Wales Parliament, the result of which brought into effect the ancient English law known as the Felons Apprehension Act. The Felons Apprehension Act of 1865 was limited in time to 1 year. It was an extremely powerful piece of legislation that permitted a judge of the Supreme Court to issue a warrant for arrest upon evidence any person accused of a capital offence, and for them to be declared an outlaw. The Act allowed any person, police or civilian, to take the bushranger dead or alive, without having to call upon him to surrender. The Act also provided for prison terms of 15 years anyone convicted of harbouring, and this included forfeiture of his land and goods. Before the Act was to become law, the bushrangers would be called upon to surrender themselves to the police at Goulburn Jail by a set date.
I'll fight, but not surrender, cried the wild colonial boy. He fired a shot at Kelly, which did bring him to the ground, and he fired point blank at Davis, who fell